The transport shuttle descended toward the massive space station that hung in orbit around a pale blue world. Lee Hyun pressed his face against the window, watching as the structure grew larger. It looked like a crystal flower frozen in space with dozens of petals spreading out from a central core. Each petal was actually a research wing, home to scientists from across the galaxy. "Stop looking so excited," Park Ji-won said from the seat beside him. She was reviewing notes on her data pad, her fingers moving quickly across the screen. "You look like a kid going to an amusement park." "This is better than an amusement park," Hyun replied. He pointed at the station. "That's the Galactic Xenobiology Institute. Do you know how many species study there?" "Over 300, and we're about to join them." Ji-won finally looked up from her pad. Her expression was more serious than his. "We're about to take their entrance exam. There's a difference. Humans have never passed it before. That's because humans have never taken it before. We're the first." Hyun grinned at her worried face. "Come on, we've got this. You know everything about agricultural applications." "I know plants." "We'll be fine." The shuttle docked with a soft thud. The airlock cycled open, and they stepped into a corridor that seemed to stretch forever. The walls were a soft white color that glowed with its own light. Other beings moved through the corridor, and Hyun tried not to stare. A creature that looked like a walking mass of tentacles shuffled past. Something that might have been made of living crystal floated by, chiming softly to itself. A guide waited for them at the end of the corridor. It was humanoid in shape but covered in smooth scales that shifted between green and blue. Its eyes were large and yellow with vertical pupils. "Human candidates," the guide said. Its voice came from a translator device on its chest. "I am Velthar. I will take you to the examination hall. Follow me and do not touch anything." Velthar moved quickly through the station. Hyun and Ji-won hurried to keep up. They passed through halls filled with strange equipment and rooms where beings studied specimens under glowing fields of energy. Everything looked advanced and alien and wonderful. Finally, they reached a large circular room. Other candidates were already there, standing at individual stations arranged in a circle. Each station had a holographic projector and a control panel. In the center of the room stood another being, this one looking like it was made entirely of clear crystal with lights pulsing inside its body. "I am Administrator Thex," the crystal being said. Its voice was like wind chimes. "You are here to take the xenobiology entrance examination. This test will determine if your species has the knowledge and temperament to study at this institute." Hyun felt his heart beating faster. Ji-won stood straighter beside him. "The test is simple," Thex continued. "You will be shown specimens of various organisms from across the galaxy. You must identify their properties and explain the proper protocols for handling them. You will have 4 hours. Begin when your station activates." Velthar led them to their stations. Hyun noticed the other candidates. One looked like a giant insect with multiple arms. Another was a floating jellyfish-like creature that pulsed with soft light. A third seemed to be contained in a tank of methane gas, its form barely visible inside. His station lit up. A hologram appeared above the projector, showing a plant with dark purple leaves and bright red thorns. Text scrolled beside it in a language his translator converted to Korean. Specimen 4471. Native to Quarantine World 18. Contact causes immediate paralysis in 89% of tested species. Death occurs within 6 minutes if untreated. Detail the proper containment and disposal protocols. Hyun studied the plant. The thorns contained the toxin, clearly, but the leaves had an interesting structure. He checked the molecular breakdown that appeared when he touched a control. His eyes widened. This was fascinating. He looked at the question again. Containment and disposal protocols. That was what they wanted. A safe, careful answer about how to avoid the danger. But Hyun thought about the molecular structure. He thought about the thorns and the leaves. He thought about all the plants on Earth that could kill you if you didn't know what you were doing. He raised his hand. Velthar approached his station. "You have a question already, human?" "Yes," Hyun said. "Before I answer about containment protocols, I need to know something. Is this classification for food or for war?" The examination hall went silent. Every candidate turned to look at him. Administrator Thex's crystal body stopped pulsing for a moment. Velthar's scales shifted to a dark red color. "What did you say?" "The plant," Hyun repeated calmly. "I need to know if you're asking about it as a potential food source or as a potential weapon." The protocols would be different. It is toxic, Belthar said slowly as if speaking to a child. The protocol is to avoid it entirely. To seal it away. To ensure no one ever comes in contact with it. Right, but that doesn't answer my question, Hyun said. Jiwon was making a small sound beside him like she was trying not to laugh or maybe trying not to scream. On Earth we have lots of toxic plants. Some we learn to eat. Some we learn to use as weapons. Some we use as medicine. The handling is different depending on what you want to do with it. Administrator Thex floated closer. You were saying humans consume toxic organisms? Well, yeah, Hyun said. Not all of them, obviously, but lots of them. You just have to know how to prepare them. The insect-like candidate made a clicking sound. That seems unwise. It's actually pretty normal for us, Jiwon added, speaking up for the first time. Most of our staple foods were toxic before we figured out how to process them correctly. Velthar's scales were now completely red. This is not a normal approach to xenobiology. Perhaps not, Thex said. The crystal being sounded thoughtful. But it is an interesting approach. Tell me, human Lee Hyun, what would you do with this plant if it were food? Hyun smiled. Finally, a question he could really answer. He pulled up the molecular data and started talking about earth plants with similar structures. He explained how the toxin could probably be neutralized through heat or fermentation. He discussed which parts might be edible and which would always be dangerous. The other candidates watched in silence. Velthar's scales slowly shifted back to green and blue, though they kept flickering red at the edges. When Hyun finished, Thex was quiet for a long moment. Then the crystal being chimed softly, a sound that might have been laughter. Human candidates, Thex said. I am modifying the examination. You will continue to analyze each specimen, but you will use your framework. For food, for war, or for whatever else you see, show us how humans think about dangerous organisms. Hyun looked at Jiwon. She was grinning now. We can do that, Hyun said. The exam had just become much more interesting. Hyun moved to the next specimen. The hologram showed a tuberous root that looked almost like a potato, but with a sickly yellow color. The data said it contained enough cyanide compounds to kill most species within an hour of consumption. This one is definitely food, Hyun said out loud. He was getting into the rhythm now. Or it could be anyway. Look at the structure. High starch content, good nutritional value. The cyanide is the problem, but we can handle that. You can handle cyanide. Velthar had moved closer to observe. The reptilian being seemed caught between fascination and horror. Sure, we have a plant on Earth called cassava. It's a root vegetable, grows in tropical areas. Raw cassava has cyanide in it too, enough to make you very sick or kill you if you eat it wrong. Hyun pulled up his own datapad and showed images of cassava. But humans figured out how to process it. You can ferment it or soak it in water or cook it properly. The cyanide breaks down or washes away. Then it's safe to eat. Billions of people eat cassava. It's a staple food in many places. The insect candidate, whose name was Corint, clicked rapidly. Why would your species not simply eat something safer? Jiwon spoke up from her station. She was analyzing her own specimen, but she'd been listening. Because cassava grows where other things don't. It survives in poor soil. It's resistant to drought. When you're hungry and cassava is what grows, you figure out how to eat it safely. Necessity, Administrator Thex said softly. Your species learned to process toxins out of necessity. At first, yes, Hyun agreed. He moved to the next plant. This one had beautiful flowers, but every part of it was listed as deadly. But then it became tradition. Then it became cuisine. We started seeking out these foods because we liked them. The next several specimens followed similar patterns. Hyun found Earth equivalents for almost all of them. A plant similar to rhubarb where the stalks were edible but the leaves would kill you. Another like the pokeweed that grew in North America. Toxic when raw but safe when boiled in 3 changes of water. Mushrooms that required precise preparation. Fruits that needed to be perfectly ripe or they'd make you ill. Your planet sounds extremely dangerous, the jellyfish candidate said. Its voice was translated as a soft bubble of sound. Its name was Pulseweave, Hyun had learned. Earth? No, it's not that bad, Hyun said with a laugh. I mean, yes, lots of things can hurt you. But that's true everywhere, right? We just learn to work with it instead of avoiding it. There is a difference between working with danger and actively consuming it, Velthar said, but the scales were staying more blue now, less red. Curious, not angry, Hyun reached a specimen that made him pause. It was a small fruit, bright orange in color. The toxin profile showed alkaloids similar to capsaicin. Oh, this is interesting. he said. Jiwon, come look at this. She left her station and came over. They both studied the data. Capsaicin-like compounds, Jiwon read, causes burning sensation in mucous membranes, activates pain receptors, evolved as a defense mechanism to prevent consumption by mammals. And humans decided to eat it anyway. Hyun finished. He looked at the gathered aliens. We call them peppers. Chili peppers. They burn your mouth when you eat them. Some are mild, some are so hot they can actually hurt you. So you do not eat them, Corin said. No, we definitely eat them, Jiwon said. They're popular. People love them. Some people compete to eat the hottest ones they can find. That is madness, Pulseweave bubbled. It's called building tolerance, Hyun explained. When you eat spicy food regularly, your body adapts. You can handle more heat, and the flavor is worth it. Plus, capsaicin has health benefits. It's good for your metabolism and your heart. He input his analysis into the station. Food use with notes on preparation and dosage, cultural significance, medical applications. The system accepted his answer. Velthar was reading through Hyun's responses on a monitoring station. You have found potential food applications in 17 specimens so far. Specimens that were marked as highly toxic and dangerous. 18, Hyun corrected, finishing another entry. This last one is basically like eating green almonds. You just have to know when to harvest them and how to prepare them. On my world, we engineered our food crops to be completely safe, Pulseweave said. No toxins, no danger. Why did humans not do this? Jiwon answered while Hyun moved to the next specimen. Some of our crops are engineered now, but for most of human history, we didn't have that technology. We had to work with what nature gave us, and nature likes to put poison in things. Plus, Hyun added, sometimes the toxin is what makes it good. Those peppers? The burning is part of the experience. Or coffee beans, they have caffeine, which is technically a pesticide the plant makes. But we love caffeine. It wakes us up and tastes great. Caffeine is a toxin? Corinth asked. In high enough doses, sure, Hyun said cheerfully. But in normal amounts, it's fine. Actually helpful. Most humans consume it daily. Administrator Thex had been silent, watching and listening. Now the crystal being spoke. You mentioned your framework includes war as well as food. I note you have not identified any specimens for weapons use. The examination hall got quiet again. Hyun straightened up from his station. His expression became more serious. Yeah, I was getting to that part. Some of these plants wouldn't work well as food, no matter how you process them. The toxins are too dangerous or too persistent. But that doesn't mean they're useless. You would weaponize them, Velthar said. It wasn't a question. Humans have weaponized plants for thousands of years, Jiwon said quietly. It's part of our history. Show us, Thex commanded. Hyun pulled up a specimen he'd marked earlier. A vine with thorns that secreted a paralytic toxin. This one, it wouldn't work as food because the toxin is in the whole plant and you can't break it down. But you could extract it. Coat arrow tips or dart tips. Use it for hunting or defense. He moved through several more specimens, his voice taking on a lecturing tone. Plants that could be refined into poisons. Others that caused temporary blindness or paralysis. One that released spores causing respiratory distress. On Earth, native tribes used poison darts for hunting. Militaries developed chemical weapons from plant compounds. Even in modern times, plant-based toxins are studied for various applications. Hyun's fingers moved across the controls. Ricin comes from castor beans, abrin from rosary peas, both extremely toxic. Both have been used as weapons. The other candidates had stopped working on their own exams. They were all watching the humans now. This is why humans should not be admitted to the academy, Velthar said. You see weapons where we see hazards to avoid. We see both, Jiwon corrected. We see food and weapons and medicine and tools. We see potential, not just danger. That's the human perspective, Hyun said. Everything can be useful if you understand it well enough. Nothing is just one thing. Administrator Thex pulsed with bright light. There is one specimen remaining in the database. It is not part of the standard exam, but I would like you to analyze it. A new hologram appeared at Hyun's station. The plant was beautiful, with deep crimson petals that seemed to shimmer even in holographic form. The data that scrolled beside it made Hyun's eyes widen. The crimson veil, Thex said. It has killed members of 14 species. Mere contact causes system failure. It is the most dangerous plant in the known galaxy. Velthar's scales flashed red. Administrator, this is not appropriate for examination. I want to know, Thex said. Human Lee Hyun, for food or for war? Hyun studied the data for a long moment. Then he smiled. Medicine. The examination hall was completely silent. Every being in the room stared at Hyun. Even Administrator Thex's internal lights had stopped pulsing, frozen in what might have been shock. Medicine? Belthar finally said. The reptilian scales were shifting through colors rapidly, unable to settle on one. That plant has killed 14 species. It is quarantined on a dead world. No one is permitted to approach it. Yeah, I read that, Hyun said. He was scrolling through the molecular data, his eyes moving quickly. But look at how it works. The toxin doesn't just attack randomly. It's very specific. It targets neural pathways and disrupts cellular communication in a precise way. Jiwan had moved to stand beside him, reading over his shoulder. He's right. This is targeted disruption, not broad-spectrum damage. That makes it more dangerous, not less, Corient clicked. For some purposes, yes, Hyun agreed. But for medicine? Targeted is exactly what you want. He looked up at Administrator Thex. Do you know what digitalis is? I do not, the crystal being replied. It's a medicine we make from foxglove plants. Foxglove is very poisonous. It can kill you easily. But in the right dose, digitalis helps hearts beat properly. It saves lives every day. Hyun pulled up his data pad showing Earth medical references, or belladonna, also called deadly nightshade. Extremely toxic. But we extract atropine from it. Atropine is used in surgery and emergency medicine. You are saying poisons become medicine, Pulseweave said. Some of the best medicines are poisons in the right dose, Jiwan added. Chemotherapy drugs that fight cancer come from the Pacific yew tree. Snake venom is being used to develop blood pressure medications. Spider venom helps with chronic pain. The list goes on. Hyun turned back to the Crimson Veil data. This toxin disrupts neural cellular communication. That's bad if you want your nerves working normally. But what if there's a condition where cells are communicating wrong? Where the signals are causing problems? Such as? Belthar asked. The scales had settled to a cautious yellow. I don't know your galaxy's medical conditions, Hyun admitted. But on Earth we have diseases where neurons fire incorrectly. Epilepsy, certain pain conditions, some degenerative diseases. We use drugs that block or alter neural signals. This toxin could potentially do something similar. Administrator Thex suddenly glowed very bright. There is a condition. In my species. In silicon-based life forms. Everyone turned to look at the crystal being. Our cells communicate through light pulses, Thex continued. Sometimes the pulses become erratic. They feed back on themselves, growing stronger and stronger until they burn out the affected areas. It is called cascade failure. There is no cure. It killed my offspring. The hall was quiet again, but this time it was a respectful silence. I'm sorry, Hyun said softly. Then he looked back at the data. May I see the molecular structure of your cellular light pulses? Thex transmitted the data. Hyun and Jiwan studied it together, comparing it to the Crimson Veil's toxin profile. Minutes passed. The other candidates waited, watching. Here, Jiwan said, pointing. The toxin interferes with cascading signals. It breaks the feedback loop. It's crude, Hyun said. In its raw form, it would probably kill the patient along with stopping the cascade. But if we could isolate the active compound and modify it, maybe reduce its potency or change its targeting mechanism. You are speculating, Velthar said. Yes, Hyun agreed. This would need years of research, testing, clinical trials. But the foundation is there. This toxin does something that might be useful for treating cascade failure. Why would you even think to look for this? Corient asked. Why see medicine in something so deadly? Hyun shrugged. Because that's what humans do. We've been doing it for centuries. Willow bark causes stomach problems, but we turned it into aspirin. Mold contamination ruined experiments, but we turned it into penicillin. A toxin that kills us might save someone else, or a toxin that kills them might cure us. You don't know until you look. And you are willing to take the risk of looking, Thex said. With proper safety protocols, yes, Jiwan said. We're not reckless, but we are willing to try. Velthar was reading something on a monitor. The humans have completed analyses of all specimens in the database. Every single one has been categorized for potential use. Food, weapons, medicine, or industrial applications. Nothing is simply marked as avoid. Because avoiding means you never learn, Hyun said. You can't solve problems you won't study. You can't find cures in things you won't touch. Pulseweave floated closer. But the danger, the risk. How do you balance this? Carefully, Yuan answered. We have safety equipment, protocols. We test in controlled environments. We start with small doses and work up. We learn from failures. It takes time and patience. And sometimes it goes wrong, Yun added honestly. Sometimes researchers get hurt or killed. But we keep trying because the potential benefits are worth the risk. That is a very human attitude, Thex observed. Maybe, Hyun said with a small smile. But it's kept us alive. Earth didn't give us easy food or safe environments. We had to adapt. We had to learn to use everything, even the dangerous things. Administrator Thex floated to the center of the room. The crystal being's lights pulsed in a complex pattern. This examination has revealed much about humanity. Your approach to xenobiology is unlike any species we have encountered. Is that good or bad? Jiwan asked quietly. It is different, Thex replied. And difference can be valuable. Candidate Corinth, what is your assessment? The insect being clicked thoughtfully. The humans are knowledgeable. They see connections others miss. They are bold where we are cautious. This could be dangerous or useful. Candidate Pulseweave? They think about toxins the way we think about tools. Pulseweave bubbled. As things to be understood and used. It is strange but not wrong. Thex turned to Velthar. And you, Observer? Velthar's scales shifted slowly. I believe humans are dangerous. But perhaps danger is what this field needs. We have been too safe. We quarantine and avoid instead of studying and solving. The humans are right about one thing. We cannot find answers in things we refuse to examine. Then we are in agreement, Thex said. The crystal being's lights grew bright. Human candidates Lee Hyun and Park Jiwan, you have passed the xenobiology entrance examination. Hyun felt relief flood through him. Beside him, Jiwan let out a breath she'd been holding. But more than that, Thex continued, I wish to propose something unprecedented. A joint research initiative. The Galactic Academy will provide resources, specimens, and facilities. You will provide your methodology and knowledge. Together we will study toxic organisms not to avoid them but to understand them. You want us to research the Crimson Veil, Hyun said. Among other things, yes, with proper oversight and safety measures, with collaboration between human and galactic scientists. We have thousands of organisms catalogued as too dangerous to study. Perhaps it is time to challenge that assumption. Velthar's scales flashed. Administrator, this is highly irregular. The Council would need to approve such a program. Then we will present it to the Council, Thex said firmly. I have seen enough today to know that humanity brings a perspective we lack. One that could solve problems we have abandoned as unsolvable. Corinth clicked rapidly in what might have been excitement. I would volunteer to participate in this research. If humans can teach me to see toxins as tools I wish to learn. As would I, Pulseweave added. My species specializes in chemical analysis. We could contribute. Hyun looked at Jiwon. She was smiling, her earlier nervousness completely gone. We accept, she said. We would be honored to lead this initiative. Not just lead, Thex corrected. Collaborate. This must be a true partnership. Human boldness guided by galactic caution. Galactic knowledge expanded by human perspective. When do we start? Hyun asked. First we must convince the Council, Velthar said. The reptilian sounded resigned but not entirely opposed. They will have many questions, many concerns. Then we better have good answers, Jiwan said. Thex's lights pulsed in a pattern that seemed almost like laughter. I believe you will. You humans seem very good at finding answers in unexpected places. The examination was over, but for Hyun and Jiwon, a much bigger challenge was just beginning. The council chamber was enormous. It sat at the very top of the space station, with transparent walls that looked out into the stars. Seats arranged in a circle held representatives from dozens of species. Some sat, some floated, some existed in specialized environment pods. Hyun stood in the center of the circle with Jiwon, Administrator Thex, and Velthar. He tried not to show how nervous he felt. One thing was taking an exam. Another thing was convincing the entire Galactic Academy Council that humans should be trusted with dangerous research. The council recognizes Administrator Thex, a voice echoed through the chamber. It came from a being that looked like living shadow in a containment field. Present your proposal. Thex's crystal body glowed as the administrator spoke. The human candidates have demonstrated a unique approach to xenobiology. They view toxic organisms not as hazards to avoid, but as resources to understand and potentially utilize. I propose a pilot research program studying organisms currently classified as too dangerous for investigation. A murmur ran through the council. Several representatives made sounds of concern or surprise. "This is madness," one representative said. It was a being with multiple heads on long necks.
"Those organisms are quarantined for good reason."
They kill. They kill because we do not understand them, Thex countered. The humans have shown that understanding can transform danger into utility. "Let the humans speak," another voice called. This came from a floating brain in a jar of fluid. "We should hear directly from them what they propose." All eyes turned to Hyun and Jiwon. Hyun swallowed hard, then stepped forward. "Thank you, council members. I'm Lee Hyun, this is Park Jiwon. We're xenobotanists from Earth." He pulled up a holographic display. "On my planet, we have a saying. One person's poison is another person's medicine. We'd like to show you what that means." The display showed images from Earth, a cassava root being processed, peppers being harvested, foxglove plants growing in a garden. "These are all toxic," Hyun explained, "but humans learn to use them safely. Cassava feeds millions. Peppers are valued for flavor. Foxglove gives us digitalis, a heart medication. We didn't figure this out overnight. It took generations of careful study, experimentation, and sometimes failure." "You admit to failures," the multi-headed being said. "You admit people died learning these things." "Yes," Jiwon said clearly. "People did die. That's part of our history. But because they took those risks, because they kept studying even after failures, billions of people now live better lives. They have food, medicine, and tools that wouldn't exist if we'd simply avoided everything dangerous." "The difference between recklessness and bravery is preparation," Hyun added. "We're not asking to rush in without caution. We want proper facilities, safety protocols, and oversight. We want to work slowly and carefully. But we do want to work." A being made of swirling gas spoke from an environmental pod. "What specifically would you research?" "The Crimson Veil initially," Thex answered. "The plant has killed multiple researchers. But the humans identified a potential application for treating cascade failure in silicon-based lifeforms." The council erupted in noise. Crystal beings throughout the chamber began glowing brighter. Several were speaking at once, the shadow being called for order. "Cascade failure has no cure. It has claimed countless lives across multiple species. You believe this plant could treat it?" "We believe it's worth investigating," Jiwon said. "The toxin's mechanism of action suggests it could interrupt the cascade effect. It would require extensive research, testing, and development, but the possibility exists. And if you fail, if researchers die," the multi-headed being demanded. "Then we learn from it and try again," Hyun said. "With better protocols, better safety measures. That's how science works." "That is how human science works," the being retorted. "Most species value safety over progress." Velthar spoke up for the first time. "I have observed the humans closely. I was skeptical of them and I remain cautious. But I believe their approach has merit. We have abandoned entire fields of study because they seemed too dangerous. Perhaps it is time to reconsider." "You support this, Observer Velthar?" the shadow being asked. "I support careful exploration under strict oversight," Velthar replied. "The humans claim to have safety protocols. Let them demonstrate these protocols. Let them show us their methods. If they can prove their approach is sound, we should allow limited research to proceed." Corinth stepped forward. The insect being had been standing at the edge of the circle. "I also wish to speak. I took the examination with the humans. I watched them analyze specimens that I would have simply marked as hazardous. They found food sources, medical applications, and industrial uses. They saw possibilities where I saw only danger. This is a valuable skill. Skills can be misused," the gas being said. "What prevents humans from weaponizing these organisms?" "Nothing," Hyun said honestly. The council went quiet. "Nothing prevents us, just like nothing prevents any species from misusing knowledge. But we're not asking to work alone." Administrator Thex proposed a joint initiative. "Humans work with galactic scientists. We share everything. Full transparency. And we accept oversight," Jiwon added. "Safety officers, regular inspections, immediate shutdown if protocols are violated. We understand the concern. We're willing to prove ourselves." The brain in the jar pulsed. "I have reviewed Earth's scientific history. Your species has indeed turned many toxins into medicines. You have also turned scientific knowledge into weapons. Both world wars, nuclear weapons, chemical warfare. Your track record is mixed. It is, Jiwan acknowledged. We've made terrible mistakes, but we've also made incredible progress. We've eradicated diseases. We've extended lifespans. We've found ways to feed billions. The good outweighs the bad, but both exist. Honesty is appreciated, the shadow being said, but the council must consider the risks. Then consider this risk, Thex said, glowing bright. My offspring died of cascade failure. So did hundreds of others in recent years. The numbers increase annually. We have no treatment, no cure, not even a way to slow it. Because we refuse to study a plant that might help. How many more will die because we are too afraid to try? The crystal beings in the council glowed in response. Several began speaking in their chiming language. Hyun couldn't understand the words, but he could hear pain in those sounds. Cascade failure affects 16 species, one crystal being said, all silicon-based. My world has lost thousands. If there is any chance this research could help, we must take it. But safely, another crystal being added. With every precaution, the multi-headed being swayed on its necks. I remain concerned, but I acknowledge the need. Perhaps a compromise. A very limited pilot program. One facility, one team. If they can demonstrate safe practices for one standard cycle, we reassess. I can support that, the gas being said. Limited scope, maximum oversight. The shadow being addressed the council. We have heard the proposal and arguments. Let us vote. All in favor of a limited pilot program studying toxic organisms under the conditions discussed signal agreement. Lights appeared throughout the chamber. Different colors, different patterns, but all indicating agreement. Hyun counted quickly. More than half the council. All opposed signal. Fewer lights this time, but still a significant number. The measure passes, the shadow being announced. A pilot research program is approved. Duration of one standard cycle. At which point we will review results and safety records before deciding whether to continue or expand. Hyun felt Jiwan grab his hand and squeeze. They'd done it, conditions, the shadow being continued. Full safety protocols must be documented and approved before research begins. Observer Velthar will serve as safety officer with authority to halt any experiments. Progress reports will be submitted monthly to the council. Any serious incidents must be reported immediately. Any violations result in immediate program termination. Do you accept these conditions? We accept, Hyun and Jiwon said together. Then this council grants provisional approval. Administrator Thex will oversee facility construction and team assembly. We will reconvene in one standard cycle to review. The council began to disperse. Representatives left through various exits. Several crystal beings approached Thex, speaking in their chiming language. Hyun caught words of thanks and hope. Corinth clicked over to them. Congratulations. You convinced them, barely, Jiwon said. That was close. Close is still success, the insect said. I have volunteered to join your research team. I wish to learn human methods. We'd be glad to have you, Hyun said. Velthar approached, scales a neutral green. You understand the responsibility you have accepted. One mistake, one accident, and this program ends. Possibly forever. We understand, Hyun said seriously. We won't let you down. See that you do not, Velthar said. I will be watching very closely. After the reptilian left, Thex floated closer. You did well. Both of you. Speaking to the council is never easy. Thank you for supporting us, Jiwan said. For believing we could do this. I did not believe at first, Thex admitted. But you showed me a different way of thinking. Now I hope you can show the galaxy the same thing. Hyun looked out through the transparent walls at the stars beyond. Somewhere out there was a dead world where the crimson veil grew. Soon they would go there. They would study it. And maybe, just maybe, they would turn a deadly poise. The research facility was built on a small station orbiting a red dwarf star. It was far from any inhabited worlds, isolated and secure. Hyun stood in what would become the main laboratory, watching construction drones install the final equipment. It's smaller than I expected, Jiwan said beside him. She was reviewing schematics on her data pad. That's intentional, Velthar said. The reptilian safety officer had been with them throughout the construction process. Smaller facility means fewer people at risk. Everything is modular and isolated. If one section has a containment breach, it can be sealed off without affecting the others. Smart, Hyun admitted. He walked to one of the workstations. These are good setups, better than what we had on Earth. The galaxy has had millions of years to perfect laboratory safety, Velthar said. Your species is still learning. That is why I insisted on these designs. Over the next weeks, the team assembled. Corinth arrived first, bringing specialized analysis equipment from the insect's home world. Pulseweave came next, floating in a specially designed environmental chamber. 3 crystal beings joined the team, all volunteers who had lost family to cascade failure. A methane-breathing scientist named Quix arrived in its containment suit. 2 more humans transferred from other research stations, both xenochemists. Hyun called the first team meeting in the central conference room. 12 beings from 7 species gathered around a table that adjusted to accommodate different body types. Thank you all for coming, Hyun began. I know this is unusual. Most of you are used to avoiding dangerous organisms, not studying them. We're going to change that. Tell us about human safety protocols, one of the crystal beings said. Its name was Shimmer. The council approved this program based on your promised safety measures. Ji-won pulled up a holographic display. First principle, respect the danger. We never underestimate what we're working with. Every organism is assumed deadly until proven otherwise. Every sample is handled with maximum precautions. Second, Hyun continued, layers of protection. We use multiple safety systems. Gloves, environmental suits, sealed workstations, air filtration, contamination sensors. If one system fails, others back it up. Third, slow progression. We start with the smallest possible samples. We test in isolated conditions. We document everything. We only move forward when we're certain the previous step is safe. Fourth, emergency protocols. Everyone knows what to do if something goes wrong. Evacuation routes, decontamination procedures, medical responses. We practice these until they're automatic. Velthar's scales were a cautious yellow. These are sensible precautions. But accidents still happen. They do, Hyun agreed. That's the 5th principle, learn from everything. Every accident, every near miss, every unexpected result. We investigate, we understand, we improve. On Earth we had researchers who died because they didn't follow protocols. Ji-won said quietly. We had labs that had containment breaches. We learned from those tragedies. Safety rules are often written in blood. We honor that by following them strictly. Quix's translator crackled from inside its methane suit. You speak of death casually. Not casually, Hyun said. Seriously. Death is a possibility in this work. We accept that risk, but we do everything possible to minimize it. That's the difference between bravery and stupidity. I have prepared detailed safety manuals, Velthar said, distributing data pads. Each team member will undergo safety certification before handling any specimens. There will be regular drills and inspections. I have full authority to shut down any experiment I deem unsafe. We support that completely, Ji-won said. Safety isn't optional. It's the foundation of everything we do. Corinth clicked thoughtfully. When do we begin actual research? Tomorrow we start with simulations, Hyun said. Computer models of the Crimson Veil's toxin. We study its structure and mechanism without touching the real plant. When we understand it theoretically, we request a sample. A very small sample, Velthar added firmly. The first weeks were frustrating. The team worked only with computer simulations and archived data. They modeled molecular interactions. They ran theoretical experiments. They predicted how the toxin would behave under different conditions. This is tedious, Shimmer chimed one day. The crystal being was reviewing simulation results for the 100th time. This is necessary, Hyun replied. He was building a 3D model of the toxin's molecular structure. We need to know exactly what we're dealing with before we handle the real thing. On my world, we would simply avoid it entirely, Shimmer said. And that's why cascade failure still has no cure, Ji-won said gently. We're not criticizing your approach. It's safer, but it also means some problems never get solved. Finally, after 6 weeks of preparation, Velthar approved a sample request. A remote drone was sent to the quarantined world where the Crimson Veil grew. It collected a single leaf, no larger than Hyun's thumb, and sealed it in multiple containment layers. The day the sample arrived, the entire team gathered in the observation room. The leaf sat in an isolation chamber, visible through multiple layers of transparent material. It was beautiful, its crimson color seeming to glow even in the harsh laboratory lights. It looks harmless, Pulseweave bubbled. That's what makes it dangerous, Hyun said. Pretty things can kill you just as easily as ugly ones. The first actual experiment was simple: remote analysis. They used scanners to study the leaf without opening the containment. Spectroscopy, electromagnetic resonance, molecular imaging, all data collected from a safe distance. The toxin is concentrated in the leaf veins, Core Int reported, examining readouts, but it also permeates the entire structure. Can we extract it? One of the human chemists asked. Theoretically, yes, Jiwan said, but we need to understand it better first. Let's break down the molecular structure. Days became weeks. They analyzed every aspect of the leaf: its cellular structure, its chemical composition, its energy signatures. They compared their findings to the archived data from previous studies, the ones where researchers had died. The previous researchers tried to handle it directly, Shimmer observed, reading the old reports. They used standard protective equipment. It was not enough. The toxin can pass through most materials, Hyun said. It's not just contact poisoning. It releases vapors that can penetrate standard seals. That's why people died even with gloves and suits. So how do we work with it safely? Quix asked. We don't work with it directly at all, Jawan said. Not yet. First, we develop better containment. We test different materials. We find out what actually blocks the toxin. This became the next phase of research. They tested hundreds of materials, exposing samples to the toxin's vapors and measuring penetration. Most materials failed. Some slowed the toxin but didn't stop it. A few actually blocked it completely. Crystalline polymers work, Shimmer reported excitedly. The toxin cannot pass through this material. So we make suits from it, Corinth suggested. Not suits, Velthar said. The material is too rigid, but we can make containment boxes, sealed workstations, layers of protection. Progress was slow, but it was progress. They learned the toxin's properties. They developed safety equipment. They created protocols for every step of handling and analysis. 3 months into the program, they were ready for the next step, actually touching the plant. Hyun volunteered to go first. He put on 6 layers of protective equipment. Over that, he wore a sealed suit made of the crystalline polymer. His hands went into heavy gloves attached to a sealed workstation. Multiple air filtration systems ran constantly. Sensors monitored for any trace of toxin in the air. The team watched from the observation room. Velthar's scales were bright red with stress. Hyun reached into the isolation chamber with the sealed gloves. His hands moved slowly, carefully. He picked up the crimson veil leaf with specialized tongs. It felt fragile in his grip. Contamination sensors are clear, one of the human chemists reported. No toxin detected outside the containment. Heart rate elevated but stable. Jiwan read from the medical monitor attached to Hyun's suit. Breathing normal. Hyun carefully placed the leaf in a smaller containment box. He sealed it, checked the seals, then withdrew his hands from the workstation. The whole process took 10 minutes. Sensors still clear, the chemist confirmed. No contamination. Hyun stepped back from the workstation and began decontamination procedures. He was sprayed with neutralizing agents. His suit was scanned for any contamination. Finally, after 20 minutes of checks, he removed the suit. How do you feel? Velthar asked immediately. Fine, Hyun said. He was sweating but smiling. Nervous but fine. The containment worked. The containment worked, Shimmer chimed in what might have been relief or joy. That evening, the team celebrated with a meal in the station's cafeteria. They'd successfully handled the deadliest plant in the galaxy without anyone dying. It was a small victory, but an important one. This is just the beginning, Jiwan said. Now we need to extract the toxin, study its components, figure out how to modify it. That will take months, Kurian said. Maybe years, Hyun agreed. Good science takes time. But we have proven something today, Quix said. We have shown that with proper preparation, even the most dangerous organisms can be studied safely. That is the human way. Pulseweave bubbed 6 months into the research program. Hyun stood in front of a holographic display showing molecular structures. His eyes were tired, and he'd been working for 14 hours straight, but he couldn't stop now. Not when they were so close. Run the simulation again, he told the computer. Variant 17, interaction with silicon-based cellular structures. The hologram shifted, showing molecules connecting and breaking apart. Hyun watched carefully, taking notes. Jiwon entered the lab carrying 2 cups of coffee. You missed dinner again. Sorry, Hyun said without looking away from the display. But look at this. Variant 17 actually interrupts the cascade without destroying the cell. Jiwon set down the coffee and studied the simulation. Her eyes widened. The success rate is 60%. Better than any previous variant. We're getting closer. They had been working on modifying the Crimson Veil toxin for months. The original toxin was too powerful, too destructive. It stopped cascade signals but killed the cells in the process. They needed something gentler, more precise. 60% is good, Jiwon said, but it needs to be higher for clinical trials. I know, but we're learning. Each variant teaches us something. Hyun finally looked away from the display and picked up his coffee. Thanks for this. You need to rest, Jiwon said. Tired scientists make mistakes. 5 more minutes. I want to try one more modification. You said that 3 hours ago. Hyun smiled. This time I mean it. The next morning, the full team gathered for their weekly progress meeting. Shimmer presented findings on extraction methods. Corinth discussed purification techniques. Pulseweave shared analysis of the toxin's molecular bonds. When it was Hyun's turn, he displayed Variant 17's results. This is our most successful modification yet. 60% success rate in simulations. It interrupts cascade signals with minimal cellular damage. The crystal beings in the room glowed brighter. 60%, one named Gleam said. That is significant progress. But not enough, Velthar said. The safety officer's scales were cautiously yellow. Medical treatments require much higher success rates. Agreed, Hyun said. We need to understand why 40% still fails. What's different about those cases? We should request approval for live cell testing, Jiwon suggested. Computer simulations can only tell us so much. We need to see how the variant actually behaves in real conditions. That is a significant escalation, Velthar said. We would be working with living tissue that could develop cascade failure. Tissue samples only, Jiwon clarified. Not whole organisms. Small samples in sealed containment. If we see positive results, then we consider larger trials. The team discussed protocols and safety measures. After an hour of debate, they agreed. Velthar would submit the request to the council for approval. 2 weeks later, approval came through. A crystal being who had early-stage cascade failure volunteered tissue samples. The samples arrived in specialized containment, still alive, and showing the beginning stages of erratic light pulse patterns. This is nerve tissue, Shimmer explained, examining the samples. The cascade has just started, perfect for testing. They prepared Variant 17 carefully. A single drop, diluted to minimal concentration, applied to one tissue sample. They monitored constantly, recording every change. For the first hour, nothing happened. The tissue continued its erratic pulsing. Hyun felt his hopes sinking. Then, slowly, the pulses began to stabilize. The erratic feedback pattern weakened. The cascade was slowing. It's working, Jiwon whispered. One sample is not enough, Velthar cautioned. We need multiple trials. They tested 12 more samples over the next week. 9 showed improvement. 3 continued to deteriorate despite treatment. But 9 successes out of 13 trials was a 70% success rate. Better than simulations predicted, Corinth clicked excitedly. We need to understand the 3 failures, Hyun said. He was studying the data from unsuccessful trials. What made these samples different? It took another month to find the answer. The failed samples all had more advanced cascade damage. The toxin variant worked on early-stage cascade failure, but couldn't stop advanced cases. So we have a treatment window, Jiwon said. Catch it early and we can stop it. Wait too long and it's too late. That is still valuable, Gleam chimed. Many die because cascade begins suddenly and progresses quickly. If we can stop it early, we save lives. We need to improve the variant, Hyun said. Make it stronger, able to handle advanced cascade cases. Or we need early detection methods, Shimmer suggested. If we can identify cascade failure before symptoms appear, we can treat it while our current variant still works. Why not both? Jiwon said. The team split their efforts. Half worked on improving the toxin variant. Half developed better diagnostic tools for detecting early cascade failure. Hyun led the toxin modification group. Shimmer led the diagnostics team. Progress came in small steps. Variant 21 worked on slightly more advanced cases. Variant 24 had fewer side effects. Variant 29 showed promise in the most difficult cases but was unstable. Meanwhile, Shimmer's team developed a scanning technique that could detect cascade failure weeks before symptoms appeared. Early detection combined with early treatment could be a complete solution. "We should compile our findings," Velthar said during a progress meeting. "The standard cycle is nearly over. The council will want a full report." "Already working on it," Jiwon said. She'd been documenting everything from the beginning. "We have comprehensive data. Successful modifications of the Crimson Veil toxin, safe handling protocols, potential medical applications, and early detection methods." "The council will be pleased," Gleam said. "Or they'll decide it's too dangerous and shut us down," Quick said pessimistically from inside its methane suit. "Then we make sure they see the value," Hyun said. "We show them what we've accomplished. Lives that could be saved, problems that could be solved." The final report took 2 weeks to prepare. It included all their research, all their safety records, and projections for future work. They submitted it to the council and waited. During the waiting period, Hyun continued working on variant modifications. He couldn't help himself. Even though the official research might end soon, he wanted to push further. He was running simulations late one night when he noticed something strange. Variant 32, which he'd created just to test a theory, was showing unusual behavior. Instead of just interrupting cascade signals, it seemed to strengthen normal cellular communication. "That's not what it's supposed to do," he muttered. He ran more tests. The results were consistent. In healthy tissue, Variant 32 didn't just prevent cascade failure, it actually improved cellular efficiency. Cells communicated more clearly, with less energy loss. Hyun called Jiwon immediately, even though it was the middle of the station's night cycle. "This better be important," she said sleepily when she answered. "It is. Get to the lab." "I found something." She arrived 20 minutes later, still putting on her lab coat. Hyun showed her the results. "This is incredible," she said, suddenly wide awake. "If this works in living organisms, it could enhance cellular function generally. Not just treat disease, but improve overall health." "For silicon-based species, yes," Hyun said. "But look at this." He pulled up another simulation. "I modified it slightly for carbon-based chemistry. Similar results. This could potentially benefit multiple species." "We need to test this," Jiwon said. "We need council approval first," Hyun said reluctantly. "This goes beyond our original research mandate. Then we add it to our presentation. Show them we're finding applications beyond just the Crimson Veil. This makes the whole program more valuable." The council meeting was scheduled for the following week. Hyun and Jiwon traveled back to the main station with Velthar and several team members. They prepared their presentation carefully, including the latest discoveries. The council chamber looked the same as before. Representatives from dozens of species filled the circular room. Administrator Thex floated at the center. "The council recognizes the Crimson Veil research team," the shadow being announced. "Present your findings." Hyun stepped forward. His heart was pounding, but his voice was steady. "Honored council members, we are pleased to report success." He activated the holographic display. Charts and graphs appeared, showing their progress over the past standard cycle. "We have successfully modified the Crimson Veil toxin into a viable treatment for early-stage cascade failure, 70% success rate in tissue samples. We have also developed early detection methods. Combined, these approaches could save thousands of lives." The crystal beings in the council glowed brightly. Several were speaking at once in their chiming language. Jiwon continued the presentation. "Additionally, we discovered potential applications beyond treating cascade failure. Variant 32 appears to enhance general cellular efficiency. This could have implications for multiple species and conditions." "Show us the safety record," the multi-headed being demanded. "Have there been accidents?" Velthar stepped forward, scales a proud blue. I have served as safety officer for this program. In one full standard cycle, we have had 0 serious incidents. Minor containment alerts only, all handled according to protocol. The human safety methods are thorough and effective. The research has been exemplary. 2 years after the first examination, Hyun stood in a medical facility on a crystal world. Through the transparent walls, he could see cities that looked like they were made of frozen light. Crystalline structures reached toward a purple sky. Beside him, a crystal being named Radiance lay on a specialized medical platform. Radiance had been diagnosed with cascade failure 3 months ago. Today would be the first clinical trial of the treatment they'd developed from the Crimson Veil. Are you ready? Jiwon asked. She was monitoring equipment that would track every aspect of Radiance's response to the treatment. I am ready, Radiance chimed. The crystal being's internal lights were pulsing erratically, showing the progression of the cascade. I trust you. Those words carried weight. Trust had to be earned, especially when asking someone to be the first to try an experimental treatment derived from one of the galaxy's deadliest toxins. Hyun prepared the injection carefully. It contained variant 37, the most refined version of their modified toxin. They'd tested it hundreds of times in tissue samples. All the simulations were positive. But this was different. This was a living, thinking being putting their life in their hands. Here we go, Hyun said softly. He administered the treatment through a specialized port in Radiance's crystalline structure. For the first few minutes, nothing happened. Radiance's lights continued their erratic pulsing. Jiwon watched the monitors intently. Velthar stood nearby, ready to activate emergency protocols if needed. Then gradually the pulses began to smooth. The erratic patterns weakened. The cascade was slowing. It's working, Jiwon said quietly. They monitored for 6 hours. The cascade continued to stabilize. By the end of the observation period, Radiance's light pulses were almost completely normal. The crystal being would need follow-up treatments, but the initial results were undeniable. The treatment worked. I feel different, Radiance chimed, clearer, like static in my mind has gone quiet. How's your pain level? Hyun asked. Cascade failure caused significant discomfort as internal structures deteriorated. Reduced. Much reduced. Radiance's lights pulsed in what might have been joy or relief. You did it. You actually did it. Word spread quickly through the crystal community. Within days, other cascade failure patients were requesting the treatment. The medical facility was flooded with applications. We need to scale up production, Jiwon said, reviewing the requests. But we need to be careful. We can't treat everyone at once. Agreed, Velthar said. The safety officer had been with them through every stage of development. We select patients carefully. Start with early-stage cases where we know success rates are highest. Document everything. Build our evidence base slowly. Over the next year, they treated 47 patients. 42 showed significant improvement. 3 showed modest improvement. 2 did not respond to treatment. But 2 failures out of 47 was better than anyone had dared hope. Meanwhile, the research program had expanded far beyond the Crimson Veil. Other teams were studying toxic organisms from across the galaxy, applying the methods the humans had introduced. The database of dangerous organisms was being systematically reviewed. Corinth led a team studying a fungus that released paralytic spores. They discovered the spores could be modified to create a powerful anesthetic with fewer side effects than existing. Options Pulseweave's group found that a toxic algae contained compounds that could treat certain metabolic disorders in methane-breathing species. Even Velthar had started a small project studying venom from a predatory species, looking for potential medical applications. You've changed everything, Administrator Thek said to Hyun one day. They were walking through the research station, which had expanded significantly. New laboratories had been added. More species had joined the research teams. We just asked a different question, Hyun said. Instead of, how do we avoid this, we asked, how can we use this? That's all. That is everything, Thex corrected. For millions of years, galactic species approached danger by avoidance. Quarantine the planet, seal away the organism, never touch it again. You showed us another way. They passed a laboratory where young researchers from multiple species were working together. Some were aliens who had never considered studying toxins before. Others were humans who had joined the program after its success became known. We're training the next generation, Jiwon said. She had taken on a teaching role. developing curriculum for xenobiology students. They're learning to see danger as opportunity, to respect toxins but not fear them. The galaxy is safer for it, Thex said, and healthier. The treatments developed here have saved thousands of lives already. In time, it will be millions. That evening, Hyun received a message from Earth. His former professor, the one who had encouraged him to apply to the Galactic Academy, wanted to talk. "You've made quite a name for yourself," the professor said when they connected. She looked proud. The human who turned poison into medicine. The researcher who changed galactic thinking. "I had help," Hyun said. "A lot of help, that's true. But you started it. You asked the right question at the right time. Do you know what the best part is? What? Other species are starting to apply human-style thinking to other problems. Not just toxins, everything. They're questioning assumptions, looking for new approaches. You didn't just change xenobiology. You changed how the galaxy does science." After the call ended, Hyun sat quietly in his quarters. Outside the window, the research station floated among the stars. He thought about how far they'd come from that first examination, when he'd simply asked whether a plant was for food or war. Such a simple question. But it had opened doors no one knew existed. A chime at his door interrupted his thoughts. It was Shimmer, the crystal being who had been with the project since the beginning. "We received new data from the Cascade failure patients," Shimmer said, lights pulsing excitedly. "The follow-up studies. 5-year projections show 92% remission rates. 92%, Hyun." "That's incredible," Hyun said. "It is more than incredible. It is transformative. My species has lived with Cascade failure for generations. We thought it was something we simply had to accept. You proved we were wrong. We proved it together," Hyun said. "Humans, crystal beings, insects, all of us. Different species, different perspectives working together. Yes, but humans started it. You had the courage to look at danger differently." The next day, Hyun presented at the Galactic Academy's annual symposium. The auditorium was packed with researchers from hundreds of species. He stood at the podium looking out at all those eager faces. 2 years ago, I took an entrance exam," he began. "The question was simple: analyze toxic plants and explain containment protocols. I asked a different question. Are these for food or for war? That question changed everything." He pulled up images of their research, the crimson veil, the modified toxins, the patients who had been saved. Humans have a saying, necessity is the mother of invention. On Earth, we had to learn to use dangerous things because we had no choice. Toxic plants were what grew. Venomous animals were what we hunted. We learned to process poisons into food, to extract medicines from deadly compounds, to turn weapons into tools. But the real lesson isn't about toxins. It's about perspective. Every problem has multiple solutions. Every danger has potential value. Every assumption can be questioned. That's what we brought to the galaxy. Not better technology, not superior knowledge, just a different way of thinking. Now I see that thinking spreading. Teams across the galaxy are revisiting old problems with new eyes. Organisms that were sealed away are being studied. Dangers that were avoided are being understood. And lives are being saved because we were brave enough to ask different questions. So I challenge everyone here. What assumptions are you making? What dangers are you avoiding? What questions aren't you asking? Because somewhere in those unexplored spaces, there might be solutions to problems we think are unsolvable. The applause when he finished was thunderous. Beings from dozens of species showed appreciation in their own ways. Chimes, clicks, bubbles, roars, all blending into a symphony of approval. After the presentation, young researchers crowded around him with questions. An insect student asked about safety protocols. A crystalline student wanted to know about modification techniques. A floating jellyfish asked about his thought process during the original exam. The exam was terrifying, Hyun admitted to the jellyfish. I thought I might fail. But I decided to answer honestly, using what I knew from Earth. That turned out to be enough. More than enough. The jellyfish bubbled. You changed the galaxy. Late that night, Hyun and Jiwon sat in the station's observation lounge. They were alone except for a cleaning drone that hummed softly in the corner. Do you ever think about what would have happened if you just answered the exam normally? Jiwon asked. Sometimes, Hyun said. We probably would have failed, gone back to Earth. Someone else would have been humanity's first representatives to the Academy. And the Crimson Veil research would never have happened. Cascade failure would still have no cure. All those toxic organisms would still be locked away, their potential unknown. One question changed all of that, Jiwon said softly. One question at the right moment. Hyun agreed. That's all it takes sometimes.